never have felt more emotion in the stadium. You never have felt, and you then said to yourself, if you do things right, this sport can not only bring people together, but it can do things that are beyond anyone's imagination. And so the World Baseball Classic is our first foray into international. We're going to do a lot of things. We're going to do as much as we possibly can at an accelerated basis. We're opening up an office in China. Obviously, we have a great relationship already in Japan. And I would tell you, a decade from now, you won't recognize this sport worldwide. Because it will grow. It is so popular in many places. There's a group in Israel trying to bring baseball back in our well. I'd like to open up in Europe in the next year or so. Hopefully we can open up in China. It's now up to us, and I believe that we're going to have growth that's unbelievable. We obviously have no television agreements for the next 7 years. That's another hurdle on by. I think the thing that we've been able to do, and I believe in our relationship with the Players Association, we've been able to confront one another. There was, obviously, as you know, years ago, and many have written it, and the revisionist of history is sometimes interesting. We have, I believe, confronted our steroid. Should we have known earlier? Well, you know, we can have that debate all day long, and I'm sure in the Q&A it'll come up some. I've had a lot of baseball people, and I regard myself as a baseball person, who didn't. I had a writer the other day who was in the Hall of Fame say to me, how could you have known? I was in the clubhouse every day, and I didn't. But having said that, we now have the toughest steroid testing program in American sports. In every way. Banned amphetamines. Been around this sport for 7 or 8 decades. I had doctors and trainers that I meet with on a regular basis tell me 2 years ago they were more concerned about amphetamines than they were steroids. And in fact, one doctor said to me, somebody's going to die, Commissioner, if you don't do something. We did. With the cooperation of the Players Association. We're testing for human growth hormone with Dr. Donald Kaplan at the UCLA lab. And so, and we have an ongoing, as you all know, investigation with Senator Mitchell, and his unbelievably great credentials. And I guess the only burden that he has is he and I are friends away from all this, but we're going to do as much as we can, be as thorough as we can on looking at the past. I guess my point to you today is we took care of the present, taking care of the future a little nervously because I understand there are chemists at work and they'll continue, unfortunately, tragically, to develop new things. We're working with the Partnership for Drug-Free America, 7 or 8 years, the Hooten Foundation. I must tell you, Brian, one of my appearances before Congress, which is actually not a day at the beach either. Donald Hooten got up. He was one of the people, there were a group of parents there whose children had died because they took steroids. And the Donald Hooten presentation was riveting. I remember, I think back that night after that hearing was over, and I couldn't get Donald Hooten out of my mind. It was really what I thought of what had happened. I've been talking to a lot of doctors, so I know all about that kind of stuff. I called Donald Hooten the next day. We had a long walk. Today we're doing a lot of work with the Hooten Foundation, trying to educate young people in this country about the effects of steroids. Last year, we only had 2 positive tests of Major League Baseball. The amphetamine ban has been very significant. point to you today about all this is, it isn't that we denied a problem. It isn't that we didn't do anything about it. There were people who would say, why didn't you do something sooner? I would remind you, my first, actually, knowledge where anybody came to was reading Steve Wilson, who was an AP writer in Pittsburgh, about Mark McGuire in July of 1998. I've told the story often, I'll tell you again. I walked into our pharmacy where the family and I have gone for years, and the pharmacist was not exactly a shrinking violet. He said, right over there, Commissioner, it's legal. I said, how do you know what I want to give? He said, I read the paper this morning, too. It was legal. Congress had made it legal. And it took until 2004 to make it illegal. Well, we began to study angio and everything else. And so, I guess, to me, I've often said, the most important thing this sport has had, and it's been protected, and it will always be protected, and I regard it as the most important part of my office, is to protect the integrity of this sport. I believe the integrity has been protected at every level, and that we have done things while sometimes unpopular. They've been the right thing to do, and we will continue to do that. And it's easy to go back and second guess, and I do a lot of that myself, about myself. But I'm very comfortable where this sport is, and we will continue to do everything we can. You know, a college student asked me a question the other day, what's your greatest fear? My greatest fear is always people. People are going to a game, which I've done for the last 65 years. And there's a scintilla of doubt in their mind that the outcome may be affected by people doing some things that they're not supposed to do. Well, I can assure you that isn't going to happen based on all of us in the sport. I'm very mindful, and I think it's the reason we've been able to do some of the things. Given our labor history, if you think that the Players Association years ago voluntarily twice changed an agreement when they didn't have to, it was unheard of. So I think that our ability to confront these issues has really led us to the golden era. You are now, I'm happy to say, living in the golden era of baseball. And as I said, I espouse for you and stated all the reasons that we have. So it's a pleasure to be here. I hope you'll invite me back for 4 or 5 years are up, and I know we're going to have Q&A, which actually I enjoy, and I was up for a couple hours in the middle of the night. That's what this job does. Just wondering when the questions will come, what they are. So I don't think I'm going to be surprised. Pleasure to be here.
But just wondering if you wouldn't mind seeing Barry Bonds break your dear friend Hank Aaron's recognition.
Well, it is a fact. Just so I said I was going to be as candid as Hank Aaron and I have been friends for 50 years, and close friends as our families. But when you're the commissioner, you know that you have to. You just don't think about that. I have said, John, I'll say it again. I have said before that if and when Barry Bonds breaks that record, it will be handled in the same way that every other record involved in baseball it was handled.
Commissioner Ralph Barbieri, KMBR Radio. I'm just wondering, what criteria would you suggest should be applied to entrance into the Hall of Fame for people who clearly have the numbers, but who we know use steroids or strongly suspect they use steroids? I mean, it seems to be unfair to say, just forget about it and let them all in, and it seems to be equally unfair to say everybody who were screaming that Canseco was using steroids from the stand, so that suggests quite a degree of naivete. But I'm not saying you're totally at fault. I think everybody in baseball, including the media, has contributed to this mess. But since it exists, what would you suggest we do to find out whether these people deserve to be in the Hall of Fame or not?
Well, which part of your question can I take on? There were the sum total of the next 11 years of 11 articles nationally out of billions. And Tom Boswell never wrote a follow-up. I like Tom Boswell. So, quoting Tom Boswell about what happened in 1988, I've gone back, I've talked to all the players that played for me. Ray Foster can tell you my close relationship with all of our players way back when. Look, I can debate that with you, and it is a debatable debate. But the fact of the matter is, as far as the Hall of Fame goes, look, you know, I had our historian, Jerome Holtzman, who's in the Hall of Fame and a Chicago Tribune writer for 4 decades, 5 decades. I had him do an interesting study on it. Every decade has had its problem. Whitey Herzog said about 2 weeks ago, and I happen to like Whitey other than the fact that his 82 team beat mine for the world champions. He said cocaine was a more significant problem in the 80s than steroid was now. I happen to know that's true from my own personal experience. But I don't hear anybody pontificating about that. I can go back every single decade and show you problems. The writers will have to make any judgment that they're free to make. But as long as they're not going to be very clear about this, let's be clear. Because I take you through every decade and show you off the field problems that were just as significant. Whether Whitey is right or not about the cocaine in the 80s, the fact is there was a Pittsburgh drug trial, my friend, in 1985, and 29 players went down. I didn't hear any comment about that. Well, it's true. Look, whatever else you want to say about any of these problems, and this doesn't serve as a rationalization, so let's understand that. We're a mirror of society. The beautiful part of this sport is we are a mirror of society. The fact of the matter is that society has this problem. I hope that baseball can play a leadership role in eradicating it. I believe we can. I believe we have. Whether somebody thinks we were too slow or the articles, that's nonsense. There are no articles. And so let's be clear about that. But that's not important. Important is that we took care of it. We now have the toughest testing program in sports. We banned amphetamines, which were a very significant problem in this sport for decades. And there are, as I said earlier, there are medical people who believe that role was more pronounced. I won't sit in judgment. But I'm comfortable that we've done everything that we can do. And after all, nobody before me had a drug testing program about anything. And if you don't think the cocaine thing wasn't serious in the 80s and wasn't well known, I'll take you back. You just go back and look at the names of the Pittsburgh drug.
What about the Hall of Fame?
Hall of Fame is up to the Baseball Writers Association of America. That's, that's an autonomous unit, and that's a judgment call that they have to make. That's not a judgment call for the commission or people in management of baseball. And I understand that. That's a subjective judgment that people have to make.
If you had your choice, how would you suggest we handle it?
I think I've answered you. If the other decades leading up to it were perfect, the decision would be easy. They weren't.
Commissioner, just as a long-time baseball fan, just as a fan, again, do you believe that Mark belongs in the Hall of Fame?
That's not a judgment that I want to make. I happen to like Mark personally a great deal. But that's a judgment that history will have to make and the writers will have to make. It's not a judgment that I really want to make. Again, just like answering John Shea's question about the first question, I try not to make personal judgments.
Commissioner, to your left. Yes, right here. Yes, Mark Purdy from the Mercury News in San Jose. I'm not interested in talking about the past. But I would like a status report on the Mitchell investigation, if that's possible. And something I've been curious about, what happens when the investigation is complete and the results come in, and let's say it finds out that there was some violation of the drug policies. What are your possible actions there? Can you go back and retroactively take away titles, achievements, much as the NCAA does? That's a two-part question. Thank you.
Okay, well, Mark, let me say this. One of the things, when I called Senator Mitchell last March, who had served on two of our ribbon committees, and I said to him, because I know him pretty well and I understand pretty well, I told him that there were no holds barred. And I know he wouldn't take it. Go where you want to go, reference what you want to do, whatever you have to understand. And he has. And that's why it's taking longer. People keep asking about time. And he and I agreed, and we just agreed with it a couple of weeks ago, that the best thing that we can do is to just keep working and set no time. He is interviewing hundreds of people. They're looking at all kinds of records. They'll have to determine he doesn't have subpoena power, as he said. I brought him to the Major League meeting, Mark, in Arizona, because I wanted the clubs to hear from him. I wanted them to hear what he had to say. As close a relationship as he and I have personally, we really have very little since last March, because I know he's very sensitive about it, quite frankly, so am I. When he finally comes up with his final report, I'll be able to answer the second part of your question. I have to see, exactly what he comes up with, what he doesn't come up with. Clubs, for the most part, have been very cooperative. He did suggest there were some clubs more cooperative than others. Well, I could have told him that before, and I have to live with that every day. And so I'm very comfortable that he will have a very comprehensive report. Then, I don't know what's going to be in the report, and I'll make it.
In your mind, you have the power to take away a full title?
Oh, I don't know about that. I haven't really thought about that. I think that's that's actually pretty draconian, because you'd have to make a judgment, Mark, about what went on, both teams, other teams. I mean, this gets into a very, very complex situation. I wouldn't get that, but when a report is issued, and by the way, one of his conditions, he issues a report. You don't do anything but read it while you're reading. And that's the way it is. Nothing to hide,
Commissioner Ron relevant to the Fox Sports FSN. Not to change the subject for too
Yeah,
long, but
fine.